support coordinator. She also will help with a lot of our eligibility and making sure that everything's in line so that you guys are cleared to start practicing and playing. And obviously myself and Kelly are here. We do who knows what we do. No, I'm just kidding. We're obviously the ones as well working through a lot of the waivers or maybe more of the education side of it as well too. So Kelly, you want to talk about ARMS real fast?
Yeah, so ARMS is our software we use where essentially we store a lot of data. The piece that's important for you is this is where you're going to find your calendar that will have all your required activities, practice times, travel. You can have itineraries on there, your tutoring, course schedules. This will be your one-stop shop for your schedule essentially. So there's some directions on here on how to set up your ARMS account if you haven't already. That little image, the ARMS mobile, that's what the app looks like in the app store. The other thing, if your coaches want to use this app for this purpose, is it's a good communication tool. It'll show up like a push notification. And essentially there's a chat feature in there. So it'll separate your team information from your text messages, and it'll kind of live in that app to make it a little bit easier. So make sure you get that sorted on your phone and you have that available to you, as it'll kind of help you map out your days.
All right. Yep. And it's extremely important to get that app, guys, because you're going to check into meetings and your schedules, your class schedules, your practice schedules, everyth's going to be on there. So if you haven't gotten it, make sure you get it and get it set up. You're going to be using it pretty consistently as we go forward here. So this obviously is, and I didn't see the title of the slide. I think it was called Volunteer Activities, right?
Yep.
Okay. So volunteer activities is what's going on right now. You guys are first practice dates. They're obviously different for the men and women. The women are sooner than the men. I want to say it's like the 3rd or 4th, Sydney, somewhere around there. And the men are closer to the 11th or 12th. The Pac-12 is playing with that number, so it might be later. So we'll see. But in general, everything happening now until you're allowed to have actual practices is considered voluntary. And so with the NCAA, there's the definition of what voluntary is what you're seeing on the screen right now. So the coaches and staff can tell you about it. Just because they're saying, hey, there's opportunities for you to go work out at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. or 9 a.m. or your strength coach is available at this time. Those are opportunities that they're offering to you. That doesn't mean that you have to be there when it's considered a voluntary time like right now. Does that make sense to everybody? They obviously can provide the date and time because they need to reserve the facilities for you. But again, you have to know that this is on you if you want to show up or not. Strength staff and medical staff can be there to help out, especially if you're in the weight room. We want our strength staff there to help for safety purposes. But even when you're out on the field doing conditioning, your strength staff, again, will be there for safety purposes. And your athletic staff will always be there, or your athletic medicine staff will always be there to help with injuries or preventative, right? If you're not attending any volunteer workouts or you decide not to go one day, you may not be rewarded or punished for that. So that is, you're not going to get a call from coach saying, hey, thanks for showing up last week to voluntary workouts, because that would be a reward. You also shouldn't receive a call from coach saying, hey, you weren't at training today. What happened? When it's a voluntary, right? Once season starts, this is different. You should be there. It's part of your agreement to be on the team that you're showing up to everything. But in the summer, everything is considered voluntary. Even if your captains are calling you and telling you you have to be there, that is not true. Cool. Questions on voluntary workouts? It's extremely important that you guys get this right, because messing up this and triggering required in the summer will be detrimental to everybody. Okay. We talked about this. Coaches may offer times and volunteer opportunities are available. Is this a repeat of the slide?
I didn't change it yet.
I thought you changed it. Okay, we can move on.
Here you go.
Go ahead and handle this one.
Okay, so kind of aligning with strength and conditioning, providing times, maybe the weight room will be open, or if you're using the field for strength and conditioning, your direct coaches, so head and assistant coaches, can also provide workout packets and suggestions of workouts. So essentially, if you're going out there and working with members of your team and you want specific drills to run through, you can ask for your coaches for any suggestions they may have. Again, this is separate from you reporting back to them or them requiring you to report back to them. They can also reserve facilities for you. So in this case, and again, that ARMS app comes into place where they can list the facility availability, whether it's your actual grass field, turf field, or the weight room, and they'll put it on the ARMS app as voluntary activity, and that'll indicate when you are available or when that facility is available for you. Captains workouts. So essentially, whether if your team has captains and they're going to be kind of running workouts on your own, being mindful that it's created solely by the athletes and not reported back to the coaches again. So it shouldn't be necessarily taking attendance and reporting back or reporting back what you went through that day to the coaches as well. Piece of this, and we kind of filtered through this, but just a heads up as you start to come into town and into San Diego, that being mindful prior to you triggering student athlete status, that while you're a prospect, many of your expenses still need to be covered by you solely. There are some exceptions considering the pandemic and COVID that we have sorted out internally and amongst the athletic staff. But nonetheless, being mindful that pay your way in all expenses that are typically expected of you to kind of keep that prospect status prior to triggering student athlete status.
And the only thing I'd add is once you guys get into season, or even right now, you know, the NCAA rules are pretty strict in this space. You get 20 hours a week once you get into season, which we'll get into later. But you can't, you know, even if you want to put in extra time, say, hey, coach, can you stay after me for 30 minutes after practice? That time is all considered countable and has to fit into our scheduled time with the NCAA. So it's kind of weird to hear, but just so you know, if coach says, no, I can't work out with you, it's because you guys are at your hour limits for the week already, okay? So if you want that in your future, or you want to put in extra time or whatever with a coach, just make sure you tell them in advance so that they can accommodate it into your schedule. And the other thing is, if you don't have a video on, please turn it on, just because if we were in person and you were sleeping or something, we would call you out for it. So we want to make sure people are here paying attention.
All right, so kind of moving on to another big NCAA topic is drug testing. So being mindful that once you trigger that student athlete status, that you're subject to all NCAA drug testing. What this means is there's no necessarily time off where they aren't able to drug test you during your time as a student athlete, no matter your location. So if you're at home with your family, not necessarily in San Diego, it doesn't matter. If they select you, there's testing centers and they'll get it done. So kind of be mindful of that. A piece of this is there's a couple positive drug test repercussions. So there's a 365-day suspension, so that whole year, and a loss of a season. So you're missing a lot, right? And that's for performing enhancing drugs. Another piece is what the NCAA calls street drugs, and that is a lesser penalty of 50% of the season. The big piece here, and to kind of avoid testing positive, is being in contact with your sports medicine trainer, that anything you're going to be taking, whether it's a supplement, any sort of dietary pill, whatever it may be, a shake, that you're running it by your sports medicine contact. They will filter through the ingredients. The NCAA constantly updates what they consider to be illegal or performance enhancing, whatever it may be. So they are in the loop on that fully, and they'll vet that for you. They'll have it on file. The other piece is if you have a prescription. If your prescription is not on file with the athletics medicine staff and you test positive for something, that the NCAA will consider that a failed drug test. So open communication with your athletic trainer, run everything by them prior to taking it.
Yeah, and we'll hit this again and again, guys, but I got an email from the NCAA just last week saying that they're still having a trend of student athletes testing positive for anabolic agents, with steroids, that are due to contaminated supplements in just over-the-counter protein stuff. So anything going in your body, so you know your strength coach or athletic trainer have to know about it, or else you'll be losing a season.
Tim, you want to kick this off?
Sure. Let's talk about extra benefits. Extra benefits is probably what you guys hear of the most. If you ever hear about somebody getting in trouble with the NCAA rules or violations happening on ESPN or whatever it might be, essentially the way this works is that you can't receive a benefit solely a benefit solely because of your status of a student athlete. And so what I mean by that, we're talking about from San Diego State, we're talking about from somebody outside generally. So what I mean by that is if you're a student athlete and you're eating on, or you're going out to dinner, maybe after a game, you guys are at dinner, let's call it Chili's, and the server says, hey, you guys had a great game today. We're going to take 20 or 30% off, whatever it is. You have your SSU soccer shirts on. You're getting that benefit because of your status as a student athlete. They don't offer that same discount to everybody. They don't offer that same discount to the rest of the SDSU students, right? Does everybody understand that? Now, if you go to that same Chili's restaurant and they say, are you an SDSU student? You get 10% off and you say yes. You are allowed to take advantage of that benefit because it's the same discount that's available to the rest of the student body. Does everybody see the difference between the two sides? Okay. So it's a pretty clear example of if you're getting something because of being a student athlete, that's where it could trigger extra benefit violations. What you're seeing on the screen are just a ton of different examples, kind of elaborating more on what I just explained, right? Discounts and credits. It's not just free stuff. It could be discounts. It could be credits for future credit, right? Free or reduced service costs. So if you're training with a personal trainer, if you have a personal coach, if you go home over the summer and you use a gym for free, those are all things that you may be getting because you're on a Division I soccer team. So again, you're getting a benefit because you're a student athlete. Other examples on the bottom as well are more extravagant, right? Getting something from a booster or a fan, even dinners, free dinners after a contest could all be considered extra benefits. So why are extra benefits important to talk about? Because the moment you receive a benefit, no matter the value, it could be a $10 meal, it could be a $1,000 flight. If you're getting a benefit from somebody, you're immediately ineligible with the NCAA. And if nobody finds out, let's say this goes on for a month or 2 months, you continue to play, and then it gets found out after the fact, every game that you played in during that time is now have to be forfeited. So whatever you did selfishly can affect your team essentially. Does that make sense to everybody? So it's extremely important to be mindful of benefits you are receiving, and is extremely you have to be responsible in this field because you're now a team that you're protecting by making those proper decisions. On the screen are just examples of what you see in the news. Boise State's getting on, the whole school went on probation because a student athlete got a benefit. Obviously coaches can get involved. Ole Miss had quite a few there, and BYU had one individual that received over $12K. And the BYU basketball team more or less had to vacate their wins for just about a whole season a couple years ago. So we'll get into this more in the beginning of the fall, but as good as it sounds and as hard as it is to say no, you're still student athletes in the collegiate level, and there's still rules that apply. The easiest thing to do is if you're not sure if you can accept something or not, just check in with your coach or office, and we can help you through those.
All right, so big piece of, especially as we move to a lot of online learning, is academic integrity. So realistically, when it comes to online learning, we're at it's kind of heightened where we need to be mindful of how we're conducting our work and how we're submitting our work. It puts us in a space where, frankly, it can be easier to cheat and kind of cross that line of academic integrity. And being mindful that the NCAA has a ton of resources, and in previous academic integrity cases, they have gone to great lengths to even figure out if you are someone who they assume has had someone else complete their work or whatever it may be. They will figure out what computers assignments were submitted on. So if it's submitted from your coach's computer or your athletic trainer's computer, the NCAA will assume that person did your work. So important piece here is to use your own computers, tablets, whatever it may be, to get this all completed. When it comes to your own coursework and assignments, login information, keep that for yourself. What we've seen in a lot of cases is this is a big piece, right? Is we're providing login information to a tutor or a manager or whatever it is, and them completing all that work on your behalf. That's where we see a lot of these cases really flare up. And then when it comes to tutoring, so San Diego State Athletics has provided tutors and then go through extensive training to help keep you eligible. and not cross these lines, right? But if you are hiring a tutor on your own, it's kind of on you to make sure that they understand these NTA and San Diego State expectations that are laid out, and paying that going rate for those tutors as well. So being mindful that this is a serious space. It can start small and kind of get big pretty quick, as we've seen at numerous schools. So be mindful to just complete and submit your own coursework, and we should be good to go there. All right, Sydney.
All right. So most of you have already filled out this form. Thank you for that. I think we're missing about 2 or 3. But the purpose of this form is to, like everything else we've talked about, protect your eligibility. There's a couple things we're looking for just to ensure that you're not triggering student athlete status yet, being that you're not enrolled in any classes yet. So we just want to make sure that you're not receiving any extra benefits on here, and then that, like Kelly talked about, that you're all paying your own way until you trigger your student athlete status, where SDSU can cover some of this. Anything else on this, Kelly?
I think as we go through all these forms, we obviously have some summer ones, and then you'll get a big batch again for the fall. That all these questions are vetted to the point of triggering other questions to be asked to just vet and make sure that we're following NCAA rules on your behalf. So obviously our job is to know all these rules and figure out the best way to get this information across. So that's kind of what we're getting at with all this information. All right, so we're gonna open it up here. I'll stop sharing my screen. For any questions you all may have, obviously this is new information. And any questions?
Yeah, and like I mentioned in the beginning, guys, we'll go ahead and get more into details of some of the stuff you need to know as a student athlete in the fall. We're going to get into employment and name, image, likeness stuff that we're seeing in the news. So we'll get into a lot more topics. But in the meantime, are there any outstanding questions at this point?
What about for the because I know that